Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Dying Fetus, Make Them Beg for Death, out September 8th on Relapse Records. The album has 10 tracks, 37 minutes in length, and this is the band's 9 full-length studio album. They are an American death metal band. Now, the design of this record, as you can expect, by 10 songs, 37 minutes, it's very compact, but it's not necessarily linear within that compact nature, which is normally the case. They found a way of making this album feel, sound, and definitely coming across a lot more dynamic, a lot more fluid, a lot more engaging. Alternating certain styles, song constructions, lengths of songs, going from longer tracks to really short, like 1 minute, a minute and a half style songs, almost like punk grindcore style, that gives a different dynamic, mixing it a little bit more punchy, makes it a little bit more to the point. But all of these dynamics make the overall album feel really fresh. It's one of those records that when the 37 minutes are over, you're ready to go back at it again. You don't always see this in an album that is this heavy, that is this brutal. Sometimes you need to walk away from those records in order to really digest the experience. This album has the right ebbs and flows that allows the listener to digest the experience as you're within said experience. As you're navigating through this album, you're already breaking it down. So this adds playability to the record and gives this album a lot of strength from start to end. As far as the sound is concerned, I honestly feel like this album doesn't follow patterns. It doesn't have patterns in the sound. It doesn't have patterns in the song construction. It's a very versatile record from that point of view, and I think it comes from all the different influences that the band has had over the years and then coming on full display as far as this record goes. The only thing that stays consistent is how memorable, how hooky the riffage is on this album. This is a great album from a guitar riff standpoint. Every song has a hook. Every song brings you in. Every song has something for you to connect with. And then it changes the style, it changes the approach, but it doesn't change the hookiness from track to track. That is perhaps the main common denominator throughout this entire record and allows the guitars to have a very centric role in the overall construction and in the overall soundscape and experience of this record. Definitely an album that depends heavily on the guitar sound and depends heavily on how hooky those guitars come across. But this is a record, like I said earlier, that has different influences. Some songs have more of that death metal aroma. They feel more pungent, they feel more brutal. Some tracks have even a little bit of a hardcore vibe. Some of them a little bit more of a blackened element in terms of how driven the guitars become. Some punk grindcore elements. There's a little bit for everybody. I think they looked at all the things that makes them tick, all the bands that they look up to, bringing different elements from those bands, creating an album that has a lot of uniquenesses, but that stays consistent with that bottom line riffage, the hookiness from that riffage, connecting all of these different characteristics, connecting all of these different songs, creating a very versatile, very fluid and dynamic record, not just from a structural point of view, but definitely from a soundscape as well. And then you have the drum sound. I honestly feel like the drums are definitely one of the pillars of this record because sound-wise, you have this versatility in the guitar sound, you have this versatility in the experience, and you have that sense of connection between songs with how hooky the guitar sound and the riffage is. That is the DNA from a guitar standpoint. But if you just have that, you still need something else in order to create volume, in order to give the songs a little bit more depth, and you definitely need something that enhances the overall heaviness and brutality of the record. And I honestly feel like that role predominantly falls on the shoulders, obviously, of the vocalist, because the vocal approach has a direct impact in that, but also of the drum sound. The drums are phenomenal on this album. I felt like they gave a lot of substance to the record, definitely made the sound feel more complete, bigger, just wider as far as the footprint is concerned, but not just big and hollow, big with substance on the inside. Really nice drum sound that complements extremely well how good the guitar riffage is on the entire album. And then you have the bass. The bass pops a lot It's super noticeable from beginning to end. It's not hidden at all, but it's not noticeable to the point where it takes away from the guitar sound, or it takes away from the drums, or it takes away from the overall experience that the songs are trying to create, are trying to portray. So it's done in a subtle way, but it has a tasteful output to it. I honestly really enjoyed the bass because I could feel it, I could hear it, I could see the impact that it has, but not to the point that takes away from the quality of the other elements. It rather enhances them, not necessarily overshadowing them. Now, vocally, consistent album from start to finish. I mentioned earlier, one of the pillars of that aggression, of that brutality of the album, definitely resides with the vocals, stays consistent with that output, even when the songs are not as brutal, even when the songs are perhaps a little bit groovier, if you will. The output vocally is still top-notch, aggressive, powerful, brutal, using a lot of duality as far as the vocals are concerned, working with layers, working with texture, backing vocals, having two different approaches, really working really well, getting the most out of that vocal dynamic that Dying Fetus has, and allowing that dynamic to be matched by the overall dynamics of sound that this record puts forward. A real complete album by the band, and I think it's definitely one of the best death metal albums of the year. From what it offers, from how it's put together, all the elements, when you bring them together, this is a great sounding death metal album through and through. As far as favorite songs are concerned, Enlighten through Agony, this is the opening track. The guitars up top creating heaviness, but also with a very driven sound at the exact same time. The drums provide consistency and depth within the overall soundscape of the track. The bass defines the bottom end of the width. So if you look at the song and you look at the sound from a starting point to a finish line, the width of the song has on one end the guitars, the drums are in that top but not necessarily near the top, and then they start to dissipate as they move closer to the bottom. When you reach the bottom end, that's where the bass sits, allowing you to see exactly the starting point and the finish line sound-wise. Vocally very consistent, more driven and even darker in sometimes, and that driven element of the track and the darkness that the track has definitely becomes the trademark elements of the song itself. Next you have Compulsion for Cruelty. Thicker song than Enlighten Through Agony. Definitely thicker song, definitely heavier song, but with massive hooky riffage. This is like one of those riffs that the moment you hear it, you know that it's this song, it's about to start, and you're gonna go back into it, you're gonna connect with the track. It allows the song to also have a great sense of consistency from start to finish. The riff in this song also almost reminds me something out of Hatebreed. It has a little bit of a hardcore vibe, and that hardcore vibe allows that riff to be more memorable, more hooky, but it also allows the song to be a little bit easier to digest. It allows the more brutal side of the track to better blend with the overall experience and not overburden the listener with it. Great track from that standpoint. Vocally staying on path, creating movement, but always staying connected with the sound that sits behind it. Creating dynamic movements both vocally and musically, allow the track to keep pushing itself forward with that hardcore bass line, connecting with the death metal sound and landscape of the band, bringing them together to create a very interesting song all around. Last but definitely not least, When the Trend Ends. This is a brutal song through and through. It's one of those like Dying Fetus trademark tracks that is just pure insane brutality, musically, vocally, drums, guitars together with bass, creating this massive wall of sound, of heaviness, coming at you with a lot of aggression, with a lot of intensity, and then the vocals combining that same aggression, that same intensity with the sound, making a very complete experience between all the elements of the track. You see the thickness of the sound, you see the big volume, and you definitely see how heavy this song is. There are some changes in direction within the track. There are some jolts that happen within the track that allows the song to keep its brutality but not necessarily feel repetitive. It allows you to have different breaks. It allows you to have different momentums. I think this is really important when putting a song like this together, because without thinning out the song, you're still allowing the track to be easier to digest for any listener. This is it. Dying Fetus, Make Them Beg for Death, out September 8th on Relapse Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.